Well, the White House is providing new details on the Biden administration's plan to send 1,500 troops to the southern border.
Yeah, this is in response to an expected migrant surge after Title 42 expires next week. Hundreds of migrants were seen, look at this, lining up at the border between Mexico and California this week. The White House says military personnel will oversee data entry, warehouse support, and other administrative tasks, while Border Patrol agents will focus on field work. The Pentagon says troops will be pulled from the Army and the Marine Corps. They will be deployed for 90 days.
Well, CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes joins us now. Hi there, Nancy. So for our viewers, 2,500 National Guard members are already at the border. I'm hoping you can tell us what the Biden administration is saying about their decision to send another 1,500 active troops there.
Well, they say that this is only temporary, Lana. They are sending these troops to the border, some of them getting there as soon as next Wednesday, because they are anticipating this huge wave of migrants, up to 10,000 a day, trying to get into the country to apply for asylum once Title 42 expires next Thursday. This, of course, is the pandemic-era rule that made it easier to expel migrants who were in the country applying for asylum. But now that rule is being lifted, and already we're starting to see the numbers pick up. We're starting to see some migrants come into the country in greater numbers already. It's already making things challenging for border cities like El Paso, and the administration knows that it is only going to get more challenging in the weeks ahead. So they're sending these troops to the border. They're not going to be performing law enforcement duties. They're not authorized to do that. You're not going to see them out there patrolling the border with weapons. They are going to be acting as support for the Border Patrol. They'll be driving trucks. They'll be working in warehouses, as you mentioned. They'll be doing some narcotics detection, basically freeing up the Border Patrol to do what it needs to do to deal with this wave of migrants, whether it lasts for days or weeks or months.
And it continues to be the issue that dogs Republicans and Democrats. I mean, Congress hasn't been able to enlist a kind of immigration reform. And so there's a comparison that can be made now between President Biden sending troops to the border and his predecessor, former President Trump, doing the same thing back in 2018. I'm just wondering, politically speaking, knowing both of them will be putting their hat in the ring for the next election cycle, how the administration is responding to a critique.
Well, you hear from Republicans on one hand that they're glad that the White House is sending extra resources to the border at a challenging time. At the same time, they're arguing that the White House never should have drawn down the number of troops at the border to begin with. They say that they should have left them at Trump administration levels. I think what is going to be a bigger headache for this White House, rather than how many troops are or aren't at the border, what really will be the big test for them is how they handle this surge of migrants. Do we see, the kind of pictures we've seen before of big tent cities, migrants camping out on either side of the border in massive numbers, trying to get into the country, overwhelming U.S. cities. El Paso has already declared a state of emergency in advance of Title 42 being lifted. So that's going to be the big test for the Biden administration, at something that could linger even months after we get past the crisis point, is how exactly did they handle this situation when you've got years of pent-up demand after Title 42 was imposed back in 2020.
Yeah, Nancy, we have to check in on the debt ceiling. So yesterday, House Democrats tried to push a debt limit increase bill to the floor in kind of a special maneuver that might be able to bypass Republican leaders. Tell us about this, and how effective are any of these efforts in averting a possible default?
Okay, so take a walk with me for a moment through House procedure. I promise this is not going to hurt too much. It won't be that bad, I promise. Normally, it's the Speaker of the House, who is currently a Republican, who has the power to decide which bills go to the floor. So a Democratic bill that he doesn't like typically wouldn't stand a chance. So Democrats are trying to use a procedure known as a discharge position. That's where you take a bill and you basically try to get enough signatures, a majority of House members, to force a vote on it on the floor. So that would mean they need to get all the Democrats together and a handful of Republicans to say, yes, we're worried about the debt limit, we're worried about default, let's put this bill on the floor to force a vote to raise the debt limit. Republicans, by and large, aren't going to go for that right now. They are trying to negotiate with the White House. They want some strings attached to raising the debt ceiling. As you know, they want to cut spending. So it's the kind of thing that's just waiting in the wings right now. And what Democrats are hoping is that if these talks end up going nowhere, or if Republicans don't like where the talks end up, that perhaps if we're on the verge of default and it's threatening our credit and the markets are reacting, that perhaps at that point they might be able to get all the Democrats and say 5 or 6 Republicans to sign on to this Democratic bill so that they could hold a vote, knowing it would get all the support of Democrats, and then they could raise the debt ceiling on their own without the House Speaker signing on. See, that wasn't too bad, right?
No, not at all. I was going to say, I learn
explaining
something
it.
every day. Nancy Cordes of the White House with that explainer on discharge procedure. Nancy, thank you.
Thanks, Nancy.
You're welcome.